Yeah, and then you see in Egypt that people are worried for any spillover of this war in the region. And Sissi is warning against the expansion of this conflict since the very beginning. And it has a few angles. One is a very direct one. As we saw yesterday, two drones over Egypt, presumably on its way to Israel, were shot down, and they crashed in Egypt, causing injury. So that isn't Egypt becomes directly involved there. Also last week, an Israeli tank by mistake hit an Egyptian border post, injuring a number of border guards. So there is this direct effect that in one way or another Egypt, by mistake or not, like gets directly hit and becomes part then of this conflict. Another important thing is the suggestion that you see in Israeli media and sometimes by Israeli officials as well, to basically displace Palestinians out of Gaza into Egypt as some sort of solution of this problem that they have, the solution of this conflict, to drive Palestinians out of Gaza into Egypt. And that is something that Egypt very clearly rejects. They say that's not something we would ever cooperate with, basically because they would feel that they would be complicit with ethnic cleansing of Palestinians then from Gaza into Egypt, so they don't want to be part of that. And the second thing that they said, like if Palestinians are being driven out of Gaza into Egypt, they would continue their resistance against Israel from Egypt, making Egypt also part of this conflict and jeopardizing the peace treaty between Israel and Egypt. So any suggestion of displacing Palestinians into Egypt is strongly rejected from Egypt.
Eduard, what has been the reaction in Egypt to the war in general? I know that there have been protests in the past.
Yeah, people are generally supportive of Palestine and Palestinians, and you feel that sentiments are getting stronger now and are combined with more anti-Israeli sentiments, sometimes even anti-Western sentiments. They feel that the West applies double standards, that Palestinian lives in the West have less value than Israeli lives, so that there's some calls for boycotts of companies that should work, that would have a relation with Israel. A high religious leader in the country, a religious authority, accused Israel of committing acts of terrorism now, and bombing Gaza and blocking utilities coming into Gaza. And on top of that, you see sometimes protest. But this protest isn't. Yeah, the state is a bit ambiguous to it. Last week, we saw major protests here in Egypt that were called for by the government. So these protests were both in solidarity with Palestine, but also expressing support for the president of Egypt, Sissi. But sometimes you see protests that turn against the Egyptian government and turn against President Sissi. And you see these protests, they want to limit very much. So yesterday, we saw a lot of security, a lot of police in downtown Egypt to prevent any protests that could turn into against the government. And you saw one small protest at a major mosque, and that was dispersed by the security forces, and people were actually arrested. And so you see Egypt is, in terms of protest, very ambiguous. Like as long as these protests are also pro-state, fine. As long as they may be against the Egyptian state, then Egypt tries to crack down and limit these protests.